Let's look at presidential succession. God forbid if something happens to the president. There's the president. Then next in line is the vice president. Then after the vice president, the Speaker of the House. Then after the Speaker of the House, the President pro tem of the Senate. Now the Speaker is Ryan. The President pro tem of the Senate is Orrin Hatch. So after we're past the Vice President, the Speaker, and the President pro tem of the Senate, we get to the Secretary of State. He's the fourth in line. He's Putin's buddy. Don't give me this crap, keep your friends close and your enemies closer. Even by making that phrase, you are acknowledging that there's an issue. So fourth in line would be Mr. Tillerson, Rex, or as Vlad calls him, my man Rex. Now, who's the fifth in line after the Secretary of State? The Secretary of Treasury. There's a guy who worked for George Soros. I'm just trying to give this the proper perspective that it deserves. So President, Vice President, Speaker, President pro tem, Secretary of State is Putin's buddy, and the Secretary of the Treasury is Soros's buddy. Now, think about it. We can do better than this in a Republican administration, can't we? Of course we can. Now, there's nothing I can do about it. There's nothing you can do about it. But are we not even allowed to acknowledge it, to talk about it, to question it, to be concerned about it? Man, come on now. What are you doing there? Anyone Hillary? Stupidest damn argument I've ever heard. Hillary lost. We're not talking about Hillary. We're talking about what's going on today. Now, the Secretary of Energy pick is a really good one, Governor Perry. He's 14th in line when it comes to succession. Just want to point that out. Well, the EPA administrator. What about the Attorney General? The Attorney General is number 7. The point is, the two original and most powerful cabinet positions have always been Secretary of State and Secretary of Treasury, followed by Defense. The Secretary of State is this Putin guy, and the Secretary of Treasury is the Soros Goldman Sachs guy. That's important to know, I think, don't you? But these appointments are important because personnel is policy. It's not like Nancy Pelosi. When we pass the bill, then you'll get to know what's in it. Once we confirm the nominee, then you'll get to know who they are. No, that's not how this works, actually. And so there are people putting out statements. McConnell, Paul Ryan, James Baker, Robert Gates, Condoleezza Rice, and on and on and on. Your quintessential Republican establishment praising Tillerson to the hilt. The Russian mouthpiece, Putin's mouthpiece, praising this guy to the hilt. The nationalist populists, who don't even know who the hell he is, praising him to the hilt. Because our earthly God has decided that he's the guy that needs to serve at the as Secretary of State. So when you look at this succession, it really does grab your attention, doesn't it? Vice President's first, Speaker's second, President pro tem's third, Secretary of State, then Secretary of the Treasury. Secretary of State's this guy, Tillerson, a Putinite. That's what, we need to use the proper language. He's a Putinite. And in addition to that, as our buddy Daniel Horowitz at Conservative Review points out, this guy's part of the crowd out there, the foreign policy crowd of George W. Bush and George H.W. Bush that everybody was supposed to say, hey, it's time for a change here. Time for a change. And this is a brilliant decision. It's shaking up the ruling. It's not shaking up anything. They're applauding. And then behind him is the Secretary of the Treasury, this Soros, Goldman Sachs guy. I don't have a problem with Goldman Sachs. I have a big problem with Soros. But Cruz's wife, Heidi, was smeared over her Goldman Sachs employment. Now, everywhere you look, you got the cabinet table. There's one over there. There's one over there. There's one there. The assistant to the president over there. It's like a reunion of Goldman Sachs. For the people. For the people. Well, New York and Washington are very, very well represented so far in this cabinet. Though there are exceptions, as there always are. But they are very, very well represented. Really outnumbering in the proportions the rest of the country, as best as I can tell. But we're very giddy about it here on the Mark Levin Show. This is the most conservative cabinet in the history of cabinets, because we know this, because it's been studied very, very carefully. It's better than the Reagan cabinet. Absolutely better than the Reagan cabinet. It's just, I'm giddy about this. Aren't you giddy?